episode of Jason Talks About. And on this episode, Jason talks about the week in AEW, starting with AEW Dynamite on February 5th, 2025, and AEW Collision on February 8th, 2025. Before we get started, I'm your host, Jason Medeiros, and the music you heard up at the top there, that's Reality 508. Get them wherever you get music. And please give us a like and subscribe on YouTube. We would really appreciate it. And you can follow me pretty much anywhere on social media. I'm on all the different apps at Jason Talks About in most places. I think my handle might be different, maybe on X. But pretty much everywhere, if you search that, you'll find me. So let's get into the action here. AEW Dynamite, February 5th. They started off the show kind of hot. They had Renee outside, Renee Paquette. She's outside. She meets Jay White coming into the arena, and she's trying to grab him for an interview. Suddenly we see the Death Riders, were standing there off in the distance, ready to jump him. So he's getting ready to face them, but from behind them, here comes Rated FTR. So a big brawl breaks out with Rated FTR, Jay White, and all of the Death Riders. Interesting thing that happened off to the side, which was kind of odd, was Marina Shafir just grabs Renee, throws her up over her shoulder and walks away with her. So I don't know if that was on Moxley's orders to protect his wife, if I could speak. I don't know what that was about, but that's what we saw. I had to skip back with my remote to say, did I just see what I thought I saw? And that's what happened. So they end up brawling into the arena. Got the crowd kind of hot, and the Death Riders retreated, and Cope grabbed the mic and made a challenge to Moxley at Revolution. Moxley was saying no, and Jay White made a challenge and said, how's about me and Cope against you and Claudio in a tag match? And that's going to be, I believe, a no rules, so some type of a street fight at Grand Slam in Australia. So they set up that match. I've said it before, I'm not a huge Death Riders Moxley fan in the storyline, and I'm still not really feeling Jay White as a babyface. I think the crowd seems just kind of lukewarm on him as well. I think he's much better suited to be a heel, especially with the Gun Boys. We'll get into that later, as the Bullet Club. I thought they had something there. And in the heydays of Collision, they were positioned as a pretty important stable. But this is the direction they're going in now. I just think Jay White is miscast. I think he's much better as a heel. I've been saying it every week. But here we are. That's one of the matches in Grand Slam. It's kind of interesting because the world champion will be involved in it, but it does not feel anywhere near the main event. I think that's going to be clearly Tony Storm. That's just my opinion. I'd be surprised if they go in another direction with that. Okay, then we got to the next match. It was Will Ospreay versus a member of the Don Callis family, a mystery member. If you guys remember, I talked about Collision, I believe it was last weekend, where they were in Don Callis' evil mansion with his stable, and he said that, who said that we're only 4 or that we're only 5, in response to one of his guys pointing out that there's, 5 of them or whatever. So the big reveal was basically a fart in church. Mark Davis, which makes no sense, who gets very little response from the crowd when he's a face or a heel. I mean, he used to get kind of surrounded by the response when he was in United Kingdom because he was coming out with Ospreay, one of the most popular wrestlers in the world. And I think people like Kyle Fletcher. He's certainly a heel now, but I think I certainly look forward to seeing his matches. I think he's good. But anyway, Mark Davis, this made no sense. Last time we saw Mark Davis, he was helping Ospreay, and he was very disappointed in Fletcher as his former tag team partner. He also looked very out of shape, even for him. He's not a guy that's usually in tremendous shape. I'm not trying to throw shade. I got to call it like I see it. The crowd was cheering "You Sold Out." Don Callis was on commentary. And their cop-out explanation for this, I'm not making this up, folks, was Callis said, if you remember, I used to manage um, both those guys, referring to Fletcher and Davis. And, you know, when, they made me power of attorney when they were in the hospital at one point or something like that, something to that effect. So basically what he's saying is because he has power of attorney over Mark Davis, he can force him to have wrestling matches against people. I'm totally lost on this logic. It is so stupid. So just remember that, folks. If your grandma needs you to become power of attorney when she gets a little older, you could just, you know what, grandma, you could just throw her in a match on Dynamite or WWE will probably be better for her. So yeah, stupid explanation. I think it just deflated the crowd because they were waiting for some great surprise, and it was Mark Davis. So um, Osprey. Well, let me back up for a second. And I also wrote here that Mark Davis didn't really seem like he was acting hesitant. Like I could see if there was, as stupid as the storyline is, maybe if he bought into it and was kind of like conflicted. And I mean, couldn't they have done? I mean, I could pull a better explanation out of my butt than this. They could have just had him come out with a mic and say something about, I don't know, I was hurt and you didn't check on me, or I'm sorry, but me and Kyle are like brothers, and and I have to do this. I have to help him, even if it means going against you. I don't know. They could have come up with anything better than Don Callis got power of attorney at some point in the last couple of years, and now we can just force him to fight people and manage and force him, I guess, to be under his management. I guess I don't know. It's so stupid. Anyway, they had a match. Osprey beat him with a hidden blade. For God's sake, I was just hoping that would be the outcome. That Osprey would just beat him. I actually thought he should have beat him a lot more easily than he did. Osprey gets the mic. He calls out Kenny Omega to join him. Callis starts to panic and run away. But then Fletcher and Takeshita make their way to the entrance stage, and Callis holds them back. And Kenny did his whole goodnight bang, and a bunch of pyro went off, and that was that. So, yeah, I don't know. That's just so convoluted and weird, and it's just kind of deflating because it's just storyline should make some sense. I know it's wrestling. I know people are gonna say, well, it's fixed and it's this and that and it's fake. Well, whatever. There should be logic in the story. Okay, I've made this comparison lots of times. I could be watching a fake show. I could be watching The Walking Dead, and if a zombie starts flying around like Superman, you can't just say, well, Jay, it's a story about zombies. Why can't you believe, you believe that part, but you don't believe this part? Yeah, because it doesn't make sense. In the context of the story, it doesn't make sense. All right, enough of that. Let's go on to one of the good things about AEW, the Hurt Syndicate. So they do an in-ring promo. They're super over. They're the new champions. They're dressed in suits. They look great. They've got the title belts in their hands. MVP is just awesome on the mic as always. There's all kind of "we hurt people" chants going on. MVP actually gave some props to Private Party. I would hope so after they wipe the floor with them to maybe help them maintain a shred of dignity. He talks about how there's going to be an open challenge for the tag team titles next week. And here comes the Guns. So we haven't seen them in a while. There was a couple of video packages, I think on Collision or something, hinting that they're coming back. And the Guns come in the ring and they say how they want to take back their titles. And they have a little exchange back and forth. And MVP talks about how he respects their dad. And that's the only reason they're not getting, I think he said they're not getting choked out or beat up or whatever. And he shakes their hands and he shows some respect. And then he, as he's walking out, he refers to them as the Ass Boys. And then they do the whole, we've got 2 words for you thing, but it's guns up, I believe. Here's my thing. I think this has the potential to be very good, but this is the problem with AEW. There's always there's a good idea in there somewhere, but the execution is always off. The Guns just came back. They're going to fight next week. So unless you're going to upset the Hurt Business in their first title defense, which would be absolutely stupid, all right? So you're not going to do that. That would be asinine. That means the Hurt Syndicate defeat the Guns on their first match back. Now, am I saying I don't want the Hurt Syndicate? I think the Hurt Syndicate should beat everybody for a while, but the Guns actually have some value. They're good wrestlers, good workers, good, decent on the mic. They look good. They actually, they look like big athletes, and they're good. And I just don't understand why you're going to jump straight to this match. It reminds me of, if I can go back to last week, what I said. Why are you having, the Hounds of Hell lose to what was it, Fletcher and Takeshita, right? The Hounds of Hell just formed a team. They just lost Malachi Black. They're on their own. I don't mean to go on a tangent here, but it's the same idea. It's like that match, okay, is good, and to be honest with you, what I was looking forward to was down the road, and I'm talking a few months from now, have the Hurt Syndicate dominant and Brody and Buddy dominant, and then have a collision course, right? And with the Guns, same thing. I think they should have came back, got some wins for at least a month before they do this. But so, like I said, there's a good idea in there. The Guns versus the Hurt Syndicate is good. It'll probably be, you could probably make it into a good feud or whatever, but their first match back, they're going to have to lose, I would assume. I mean, it would be stupid to have the Hurt Syndicate lose already. They're the most overact in the company right now, probably, and the most legitimate. So, yeah, so that's the issue. We're just going straight to the, the best match possible right away. You need some build, That's my opinion on that. So I'm looking forward to the match. Don't get me wrong. I think it'll be good. I just think it was, too early for it. So that's my opinion. Okay, so now we're back in the backstage area with Renee Paquette and Harley Cameron and her Mercedes Moné puppet. Mercedes walks out of her locker room behind them, calls Harley a loser, says losers don't ride the money train, and walks away. And Harley Cameron puts up the middle finger, and Renee tries to stop her from putting up the middle finger. So they're doing a little bit of comedy there. I've said it before, I'm a Harley Cameron fan. I think they should definitely go. I mean, they are going with this match. They're just, making the suspense. But I'm sure this is going to be a match in Australia with Mercedes, and I'm actually looking forward to it because I think the Harley Cameron character has captured a lot of people's imagination, and she's funny and she's entertaining, and that's why we watch wrestling, is to be entertained. I mean, I still want good wrestling, but there's nothing wrong with being entertained. They show Renee again, and she bumps into Hangman in the back. She talks about last week you were looking for Swerve, what was going on, and he said that was a moment of weakness. So they keep teasing this Hangman kind of redemption story going on. He says he has no regrets about what he did to Christopher Daniels, and then Max Caster interrupts. He's around the corner, and he's basically saying, Renee, tell this guy to hurry up. I'm supposed to be I'm supposed to be next or whatever, and he interrupts and Hangman gets really pissed off, and basically Caster starts running from him like a coward, and Hangman starts to chase him. So more on that later. Okay, so earlier I talked about the Hounds of Hell against Takeshita and Fletcher. I'm sorry, I said last week. I watch a lot of wrestling, so forgive me. It was actually part of this show. And so, like I said, why do it? Okay. Just to frame some of the match, Callis was on commentary again. The crowd was barking for Brody. Brody was real dominant early, chopping the two heels all over the place. They did go outside forever. Brody actually had enough time to do his splash against the barricade twice without the referee counting everybody out. The crowd was into it. There was Buddy chants. He had a good flurry against Fletcher. This is awesome chants. So, again, the match was good. I'm not crapping on the fact of having the match, but here's my problem. Fletcher and Takeshita are going against the two top baby faces in the company, and I'm not saying they should trash the Hounds of Hell. but they should probably be fighting a team they can beat a little more easily to look more dominant. On the other side of the coin, like I said earlier, why would you give the Hounds of Hell first major match? I think they've only beat like two jobbers before this. So they're in this match and they lose. Okay, it took a lot to pin Brody, but they did it. Okay, but again, this is their first match, and my hope was that they were going to be protected and get prepared to go against the Hurt Syndicate. Now, obviously, they already have a loss, so now you'd have to have them win out for a long time before you go to that match. So, what ended up happening was Okada's music played as Buddy was on the top rope. That distracted him. That allowed the heels to get the upper hand, and Fletcher and Takeshita double brainbustered Brody. That was impressive looking. Again, good match, impressive finish, crowd into it. Just probably a month or two too early, in my opinion. Neither of these teams should have been losing, especially the team that just formed. They had a Hook and Joe were in the back. They jumped Nick and Kip Sabian in their locker room, and Christian was peeking in the door because he's a coward and he didn't interfere. And then after Joe and Hook took off, he kind of ran in the room and said, "Oh my God, what happened?" So I guess if Nick and Kip watch the replay of Dynamite, they're going to be pissed at Christian. So MJF was in the ring cutting a promo. I found the crowd to be very mid, if I can borrow MJF's words here. Sorry to say, MJF usually used to get a gigantic reaction one way or the other. He's talking about geriatric Double J, and he wants his triple, basically that he's done with Jeff Jarrett, thank God. He wants his Triple B back. Okay, now you got me a little interested. He's going, he wants the belt. Okay, you got me a little bit. Max Caster runs out. He's running away from Hangman still. So Caster runs through the ring. MJF kind of threatens him. He runs away, and then Hangman's music hits. Gets a big pop. Cowboy shit chants. He gets in the ring. Quick face-off, nose-to-nose with MJF, and then takes off again. And so they're still teasing Hangman and MJF, and that actually interests me. There was shut the F up chants because MJF went back to cutting a promo. And then Dustin interrupted, Dustin Rhodes. And I was like, okay, this is a pleasant surprise. I like Dustin. I'm a fan. Big Dustin chants. He tells him to he tells MJF to shut his stupid trap. He says, how dare you bring up Owen Hart and you talk about people's addictions. I've been clean and sober for 16 years. And it was a really, really good promo. He's 55 years old, Dustin, but he looks good and he can still probably wrestle a great match against MJF. He actually called MJF a boy and said, "I'm better than your bitch ass and you know it." And I kind of thought like they should kind of leave it there or maybe just have maybe MJF do something underhanded to him, but he actually got back on the mic. So, bravo for Dustin. Oh, you're better than me. You're a worthless drug addict. 37 years to get out of the shadow of your old man, Goldie. I think he said something about I would whoop his ass too. And then he said, not you were in the shadow of your father. Now you're in the shadow of, and he kind of worded it like this, your widow, baby, water. But before he could finish saying brother, Dustin decked him. So he's basically he's bringing up Cody. And we all know, obviously, that Cody is Dustin's brother. And there's a big history between Cody and MJF, so I don't really have an issue with Cody being brought up here. I wouldn't bring up WWE constantly, but it's logical in this scenario to do it. So they get into a big brawl. Security comes out, breaks them up. As security's holding them back from each other, MJF gets loose and low kicks Dustin in the balls, which is ironic since Dustin's the one that does the shattered dreams all the time. The crowd was into all this, I'll tell you that, and they were booing the shit out of MJF at this point, and Christopher Daniels was out there, and he basically MJF told him off on the way out, and so I'm looking forward to that. So they're setting up a match with Dustin and MJF, and I think that's going to be a really good match. Mariah May came out and she got on commentary, and the next match was Toni Storm versus Queen Aminata again. So I just have to say it again. Storm and Aminata, good match. I'm going to get into it a little bit. But Queen Aminata is, to me, a hidden gem of a talent that they have there. She always loses. Obviously, she was going to lose here. They're not going to have Toni Storm lose on the road to Australia in her home country to fight Mariah May. So as soon as this was announced, I said, oh man, this would probably be a good match. It would probably, even if it's babyface versus babyface, maybe if Toni wins the belt, and maybe a few weeks from now, after Queen Aminata's gotten 2 or 3, 4 wins maybe on TV, then I say, okay, then she can absorb a loss. Problem is, she loses almost every time we see her. And she actually has talent. And she's beautiful and tall and athletic, and she feels like she could be somebody in WWE. Like, I don't get it. I don't understand who makes these decisions. So again, am I against these two women fighting? No, I'm against them fighting right now. So that it kind of seems to be the theme today. So, all right, let's get into this, though. Enough of my tangent about Queen Aminata. Toni Storm came out, and she was playing the role of Mariah May. And for those of you who have not seen this, I would highly suggest you do, because that came complete with her wearing Mariah May's attire, which I would like to say I am in favor of moving forward for Toni Storm. I think that should be her new thing, that she wears Mariah May's attire. Probably the less said about that, the better, for my sake. But anyway, yeah, it was really interesting, and I would strongly suggest checking it out. This made Mariah May very mad. There was a big-time Tony chants. Serena Deeb was shown watching in the back for some reason. They said something about she's had issues with Queen Aminata. I think that was on, like, Collision, like, freaking 2 months or 3 months ago or something. So, yeah, really testing people's memories there. I like Serena Deeb. And again, another person I wish they would present better. There was actually This Is Awesome chance. They had a good back and forth match, very competitive. Tony won with the Mayday, is what I'm trying to say. And Renee did an interview with her in the ring, and May stormed off, really pissed off because Toni Storm did the interview as Mariah May. And yeah, so, it was in line with the Toni Storm character, acting as somebody else. And so I thought that segment was pretty good. Dustin was backstage and said something about fighting MJF, and I could have sworn he said next Tuesday. So I don't know if Dynamite's going to be on Tuesday for some reason next week. I have to look into that. And I think they're going to be in Texas. So the crowd should be hot because it's Dustin Rhodes and he's from Texas. So that's good. Jericho did one of those New York Minute things, and he's talking about Bandito. And the crowd was telling him to STFU, and I agreed. And Brian Keith is apparently going to fight Bandito on Collision. And then Hobbs interrupted the New York Minute, and he got jumped by all 3 of them. And then the Outrunners came out and helped. And then security came out and started breaking everybody up. And Bill and Hobbs were each on opposite sides of the ring looking at each other on the outside. They each grabbed the security guard by the neck, and they each choke slammed him on the floor. Pretty stiff, by the way. And then they ran toward each other and started brawling, and kind of brawled over the announce desk. And there was big meat chants. And they took out the cameraman, and they went to break with the shot of, the camera that got knocked over or whatever from that vantage point. All right. And then we had Swerve versus Ricochet in the main event. So Ricochet took a chair to Swerve on the entrance, hit him 3 times with it. Swerve told the referee to still ring the bell. Ricochet gave Swerve the vertigo, and he kicked out. So after the chairs and the finishing move, he still kicked out. The crowd was hot. A lot of Swerve's house chants. I wrote again, outside forever. They were outside too long again. For a match that's not supposed to be no countouts or whatever. There was a spot that really made me cringe. I don't mean to say because it was cringeworthy, like as the kids would say in an insult. I mean, it literally made me cringe and go, ooh, because Swerve power bombed Ricochet on the barricade, which, if you can imagine that, they're balancing on the barricade. There's got to, it's maybe like, I'm guessing maybe like a foot wide. So that's like all spine right there. So that, I don't know. AEW tends to do a lot of these things: ring aprons, guys landing on their heads on the top turnbuckle. I just, I don't know, that kind of stuff. I don't know if I would want to allow that if I owned the company. So anyway, they did that spot. They got back in the ring. Ricochet actually kicked out of the Swerve Stomp. And then they did this weird angle where so eventually Swerve went for a second Swerve Stomp, and Ricochet had his hands up, almost like, no, no, no. And the story they're telling is that when Swerve came down and when Ricochet's hands were up, he basically connected to the family jewels on Swerve. And the storyline reason he wasn't disqualified for this is basically because he just had his hands up in like a defensive position when Swerve jumped down. So they're trying to do the thing of the fluke victory, which is what they did here. So Swerve's over there holding between his legs. The ref, is kind of like, what do I do here? There's nothing I can do here. And Ricochet gets a big smile on his face, hits the spirit gun from behind, and pins Swerve. And then he pushed Nana to the floor, and I forgot to mention in the beginning on the entrance, they show that Swerve had this really fancy robe on, which is Nana's robe from the embassy that he used to manage or something. It's a very important robe. I don't know. It's so important that most of us have never seen it or seen it so long ago we forgot about it. But anyway, that's the story now. Ricochet took the robe. Okay, so let's go to Collision on February 8th. They opened the show Saturday night's main event style with the backstage promos. Briscoe and Fletcher promoing each other. They're going to fight each other. If you remember, Briscoe had upset Fletcher in the middle of the Continental Classic. Another reason it should just be a regular tournament last year. Okay, I won't mention anything else about that. Then we go out to the ringside area and we see a security get thrown across the screen, and it's Marina Shafir, who beats up men all the time. So like I said, when she starts wrestling again, she should be the most dominant women's champion of all time because she's just beating up men left and right all the time. Even though she couldn't really win almost any matches against the females early. So I don't know. Anyway, so she's throwing security around. Mox comes in, cuts an in-ring promo on Cope. It says, you can stick your challenge up your ass, and they're going to have the tag team match next week in Australia, but he's not going to get a title shot, and something about, I'll finish the job and break your neck for good this time when we fight or something. And so they're setting up that him and Jay White are going to fight. Moxley and I think it's Claudio, one of the Death Riders. I think it's Moxley and Claudio are fighting White and Cope. I just mentioned that earlier on Dynamite. Then they had a triple threat match, a triple threat trios match, okay, that they've been kind of building between these three teams for weeks now. It's the Kingdom, the Undisputed Kingdom of Adam Cole, Roddy, and Kyle O'Reilly against Garcia, Parker, and Matt Menard, and Shane Taylor Promotions. The Kingdom ended up winning this match. The Riders ended up attacking. So by Riders, no Moxley or Shafir this time, just the trios champs, which is Claudio, Pac, and Yuta. The Kingdom ended up actually getting the upper hand and running them off. And then Adam Cole made a challenge, and they're going to have a match on Dynamite for the trios titles. So that's another match added to Dynamite. Okay, next week. So Bandito defeated Brian Keith in a match. I don't really have a lot to say about that. Rush Jurlistico and Mordos defeated just a local talent team. Commander ran out there to fight all three of them. I'm not sure why, because inevitably, like any sane person would notice, the numbers caught up and he was getting the hell beat out of him. And then suddenly they cut to the video we've been seeing for a couple of weeks of Hologram I'm not making any of this next part up, so just bear with me. Hologram is walking down the street in some neighborhood with a hoodie on and his mask on, and he used his hologram powers to make like a portal in a wall. I guess we're supposed to think he's portaling into the arena, I guess. And suddenly, boom, he shows up at the entranceway, and his mask was different though. So whoever edited that should probably at least make sure he had the same mask. I'm pretty sure his mask was different. He comes in, he makes the save, and while all this was going on, Roosh had gotten knocked out of the ring, and he was really pissed off. So when the baby faces left, he had a chair and he wanted to go after them, and three refs got in his way, and Roosh knocked one of the refs out. So they made a big deal of that and said, "Oh my God, he's going to get fined." So Hologram has hologram powers to travel through, make portals and travel through walls, and so he's probably going to be a pretty tough guy to beat in a match if he can do all that stuff. Lexi is in the back with trying to get a word with Megan Bayne, and then she bumps into Thunder Rosa, and Thunder Rosa tries to say hi to Megan Bayne, and Megan Bayne gives her the cold shoulder. Then we go out to the ring, and Harley Cameron is doing a concert with Puppet Mercedes, and she's got her guitar, and I gotta say, I know this sounds goofy, but it did get good. Mercedes did interrupt because obviously Harley Cameron was talking trash about her again, I think in song form this time. Yes, actually it was. Mercedes interrupted, basically talked to her like, that, she's a loser, and, stuff she's been saying for a couple of weeks now, like, "You're not on my level, you're a loser, blah, blah, blah." And Harley actually got really serious, and this was good. She said, "You're right. I'm scared, and I'm new, and I look up to you, and I wish I could accomplish all the things you have someday." And but then her compliments kind of went sideways when she said, "But you know something? The most interesting you ever been is when I had my hand up your ass," referring to her puppet, of course. So don't get too excited, folks. And then Mercedes gave her a big slap, and then Harley did a really good-looking punch with a microphone in her hand. She screamed out, "Feel the wrath," punched her with the mic. It was a really good-looking punch. If she didn't actually hit her with the mic in the face, then she made it look really good. And that caused Mercedes to roll out of the ring and get pissed off and say, "You want the match? You're on." So they are going to fight on Australia. Lexi was in the back doing a sit-down interview. It was supposed to be with Buddy and Okada. Buddy's waiting for Okada. He's late. He comes in. He asks for a water. He's acting like the pampered superstar. Buddy just kind of runs off Lexi. Says, "I'll take it from here." Gets his chair real close to Okada. Says, "Look, let's cut to the chase. I'm the best in Australia. The best in Japan. I want to. I want the real Okada. I don't want this comedy facade." And he gets right up in Okada's face, and Okada does a smile and says "bitch" again, and then Buddy acts like he's gonna punch him, and Okada totally flinches, and Buddy at this point just kind of gives him a good slap in the back and walks away. So I gotta tell you, I think the move is to give Buddy the belt. I don't think they're gonna do that, unfortunately. But that's what I would do, especially when you just had the Hounds of Hell lose, like I said, which made no sense. So maybe this would be a way to rehabilitate them a little bit, give one of them a win. Because I would, if I was betting, I would say Tony Storm's going to win and Harley Cameron's not going to win. I don't know how many Australians you want to lose on this thing. Fletcher's Australian. They might beat Ospreay and Omega. I don't think I would do that, but I don't know what they're going to do. But he's a heel anyway. But yeah, I got to say, send the crowd home happy. I would have Buddy win the belt. That's just me. Because Okada has been very underwhelming in his AEW run as far as I'm concerned. I used to watch New Japan on a delay on Access TV, so I was watching a little behind. But I liked watching a lot of the stuff from New Japan, and Okada was a highlight, and this is not the same Okada that we've seen here in AEW. Dustin Rhodes beat a local talent and then cut a promo just hyping up the match with MJF. Rosa fought Penelope Ford. Thunder Rosa is from Texas, and they were in Texas, so it was a big pop for her, and she was really over. Penelope Ford is still very awkward in the ring, I'm sorry to say. She did some good moves, but looked like there was a lot of miscommunication out there. Um, at one point, she licked Thunder Rosa on the face, let me specify, in the corner. She went and did a moonsault and missed it, and it looked like to me like she actually was hurt after that because she just didn't look right. Thunder Rosa ended up winning shortly after that, but then all of a sudden, Megan Bain had her big entrance, and she came out, and she looks like $1,000,000 in her Greek goddess looking thing from Mount Olympus, and she gets in the ring, and you're wondering what's going to happen between her and Thunder Rosa, and then Penelope attacks Thunder Rosa from behind, and then Megan Bain gave Thunder Rosa the F5. I don't know what she calls it, but that's the move she gave her. And so now they're setting up Megan Bain and Thunder Rosa. I like Thunder Rosa. Again, it's one of those things where I probably wouldn't go straight to Megan Bain in her because I think Megan Bain is a talent and should probably be protected for a while, which means she's going to pin Thunder Rosa. I just probably wouldn't go to them again. So I know it's a common theme, but Lexi's in the back talking to Bun B, who's somebody famous that I don't know, and he makes Trill burgers. And Ricochet walks up and kind of says, "Oh, you're Swerve's friend, aren't you?" Which I didn't know, and he kind of talks about, "Oh, I'm going to try a Trill burger," and then he spits it out and says it tastes like trash. And some worker that was standing behind the table with the Trill burgers, who I'm going to assume is an indie wrestler, said, "Oh, what do you mean? They're really good." And then he said, and Ricochet's like, "How dare you talk to me?" And he attacks the guy, and Bun B gets kind of upset, and Ricochet did that big laugh in the guy's face and took off and basically said something about say hi to Swerve or something. Mariah May had an exhibition match, so she beat up Shay Carmichael, who was dressed like Toni Storm, and hit her with the Mayday and won pretty easily. And then smeared lipstick all over her. And then the return of Luther, ladies and gentlemen, he came out, and so the butler is back, Luther, and he comes to the ring, and he has a tray in his hand, and he takes the little curtain, a little napkin off of it or whatever, and it's the shoe, and I think it's the shoe that Mariah May bloodied Toni Storm with all those months ago. And when Mariah May turned around, Toni Storm had switched places with Shay Carmichael, and she didn't notice because I should say Shay. I'm not sure if I said it, but Shay Carmichael was dressed like Toni Storm, and the announcers had to explain really quickly that Mariah May had convinced her to do this. I don't know why she would agree to that, but they had to set up an angle where Toni Storm switched with the girl, and so Toni Storm ran May out of the ring, and she ran through the crowd, and Toni Storm ended up getting on Luther's shoulders and he walked her around the ring so she could pose for the crowd. So again, more hype for the match in Australia. So Brian Cage and Lance Archer are beating up just a bunch of people backstage. So I guess Tony Khan's gonna have a lot of lawsuits on his hands. And Mark Davis is with him, and now he looks a little hesitant. And Archer just says, "Hey, you're in the Callis family now. Come on, you got to join in." And then he just starts beating people too. So I guess it's that power of attorney. He has to do it. Okay, the main event was Fletcher versus Mark Briscoe. Briscoe was bleeding. There seems to always be blood on one of these shows on AEW. Not that I'm saying that this was bad, because it actually was a real good match, and they had the history of that Fletcher thought it was a fluke when he lost in the Continental Classic to Briscoe. There was a really cool spot. Again, I'm not advocating for all this outside stuff without getting counted out, but there was a cool spot where Mark Briscoe did the froggy bow. So the table was set up, and Kyle Fletcher was not laying on the table, he was standing in front of it. And when he jumped out and did the froggy bow, Fletcher timed it beautifully, where he jumped up just a split second before Mark Briscoe came down and boom, crashed through the table. Really cool looking spot. But here's the problem. They do that. Briscoe gets up, rolls Fletcher in the ring, and then hits a second froggy bow in the ring. Now, granted, folks, this is his finishing move. He did it through a table on the outside and then in the ring, kick out at 2. This is just, AEW again, like what logic does that, in what world does that logic make sense? Like, you just buried Mark Briscoe's finisher like forever. Um, Fletcher ended up winning with the brainbuster on the turnbuckle, which looked rough and I think is so dangerous. And then Fletcher did grab the mic and talked about how Briscoe's win was a fluke and put over the Grand Slam match in Australia. He's from Australia, obviously. That was Collision. So, quick note before I go, just commentary on AEW's relationship with Max, TBS, and TNT. I can't understand for the life of me. This Australia show should be a big deal, and they've got some big matches on it. Here's the problem. It's going to be on after All-Star Saturday night. So a lot of people might say, well, they're going to have a big, huge lead-in. True, but it's going to be like freaking, I don't know, 11 o'clock at night. Is that going to hold? And did they not know when they booked this that it was NBA All-Star Weekend? And another question, if it is, can't Max live stream it in Australia? I know it'd come on early in the States, but that way people that could still watch it, or so it's going to be basically a replay at night, so people can get spoiled. And after All Star set, so they could have a good lead in, but I don't know. Is there a huge crossover between people that are watching NBA All Star Saturday night that are going to then say, "Hey, let me check out this AEW"? I mean, I'm not crapping on that aspect of it, but I just don't understand why Max couldn't have just streamed it in real time in Australia. I don't get it. I don't know. It just seems like they put together a pretty decent card, and it's going to be buried on a late Saturday night. And I'm not talking about Saturday night's main event at 8, 9 o'clock. This is like NBA Saturday night, I'm assuming, is going to end at like probably 11. So, but that's what they're doing. I don't get it. I feel like that relationship between AEW and Max should be a little stronger and a little more accommodating, but whatever. They're paying them $185 million a year, so I guess everybody's happy. So my opinion on the week in AEW, like usual, it's a little helter-skelter. There was some really good wrestling on some of these matches, and there were some good concepts and ideas, but I just feel like the execution wasn't there on everything. And like, I don't want to reiterate the whole thing, but there was definitely a few matches that I said, why do this right now? Why do this yet? So I would say so weak for AEW. Some good, some bad. I think more good than bad. And it seems like the quality of Collision has been going up in recent weeks. So that's a good sign. And from everything I'm reading and hearing and seeing, their ratings have been steady, and I don't know what the Max numbers are. I don't think anyone knows, but it did sound like I forgot who the gentleman was, but somebody from Max did say that they are happy with the numbers they're seeing internally on Max with AEW. So good for them. I've said it before. I'm not rooting for them to fail. I criticize them because I care, and I would like them to do well. And the more wrestling competition, the better. Better for us, better for the boys, better for everybody. So, but that's my opinion on the week. Okay week, pretty good. I feel like they have some good momentum going into Australia, but I just stated my feelings on how that's going to be handled when it actually happens. So I guess we'll have to wait and see. But anyway, thanks for listening. If you are listening, what I would ask again is if you could give us a like and a subscribe on YouTube, and share and follow and engage. I would love to hear from you guys and let me know what you think. But that's it for AEW, and stay tuned for next time. All right, thanks guys. Appreciate you.